welcome to our Under the Hood of Caregiving event. I'm Elizabeth Elfenbein. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the founder of Under the Sisterhood, and we are the story sharing company and a social impact organization that is powered by intergenerational stories. And our goal is to amplify voices so that we inspire women and people to act on women's behalf. Today is a really important day for us at Under the Sisterhood because caregivers, there's a whole economy around the caregiver, which all of you know. But more importantly, there are mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, cousins, uncles, aunts, siblings, and they're just regular human beings who are taking on a burden that is so enormous. And I personally went on a journey in 2015 when my younger brother's wife was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. She has since passed. And every day I'd get on the train and we would talk before work. His wife would go off to school, and she's a teacher, and we would talk, and he would tell me what was going on. And every morning on my way into work on the train, I would cry and think, what can I do for my brother? How can I caregive for the caregiver? And Michelle, I'm sure you're shaking your head because I know that you had the same experience for your mother. And that led me to create the Caregiver Speak Up platform. And it was a series of documentaries documenting caregivers at all stages and in all conditions. So from everything from diagnoses to grieving the loss of a loved one, everything from cancer, autoimmune disease, Alzheimer's, like all these different conditions and diseases, and really a platform to celebrate and give voice. And I continued the journey when I left that organization. And I was fortunate enough, one of our colleagues is on the call, Rick, to do another series called A Day in the Home of the Caregiver. So caregivers mean the world to me. I've studied them. I've gone in the home. It's been an ethnographic experience. And giving them voice today, there's like no greater privilege to me to honor the caregiver. So I just wanted to say that this really is sort of a profound event for me tonight because our caregivers are holding up. They have giant shoulders. They are taking care of families. They're doing full-time jobs. They're doing full-time caregiving on top of their full-time time jobs. So anyway, without further ado, let's get right into the program. We have four incredible panelists, and my colleague Amy Danielson will be hosting if there's a Q&A at the end. But we have four incredible panelists who are all different types of caregivers. And so I will go on to introduce the first panelist. And I think what's interesting is the differences and then the universal commonalities that come out of the caregiving experience that are kind of unarguable. So the first one, I'm delighted to welcome our first panelist, Dr. Eboni January, widely known as Dr. EJ, a board-certified OBGYN, a surgeon, a best-selling author of The Empowered Motherhood, and a nationally recognized leader in maternal health, preventative wellness, and healthcare equity. So Dr. EJ, if it's okay, I'd love to get going with the first question. And I like this one because, we play so many roles, if you will. As a physician, you spend your days caring for others. You've been trained to care for others. How did stepping into the role of caregiver for your father shift your understanding of compassion and care?
Honestly, it didn't. I spent my entire career focused on compassionate care.
Mm,
It just so happened that I'm related to the patient now. And it's interesting that I remember when I first started practicing medicine, you're young, you're new, and people are trying to get used to you and the type of person that you are, the type of doctor that you are. And I remember I'm one of those doctors, I give you all of the options. We can do this, we can do this, we can do this, or we can do nothing, right? And so many patients would ask me, what would you do if I were your family member?
mm,
And they can tell you to this day, I would tell them I would do the same thing. Like I wouldn't change anything. And sometimes I would be offended because I'm like, there's no possible way that I'm going to change how I practice medicine based on whether we have the same blood running through our veins. I practice medicine no matter who you are. I deliver the same type of compassionate care. And it's so funny when you work as much as I do. your patients actually become your family. So it was important for me to let them know that. So the way I see care and compassionate, it hasn't changed. I've always been this way, always will be this way. And I tell people I'm a woman first, which means that I'm a patient first before I'm a doctor. And so if you don't understand that you could be on the receiving end of this as a physician, then I don't know what more to tell you, that you have to deliver compassionate care no matter who it is, whether you're related or not. And so it hasn't changed for me at all. Like I said, just now I'm related. I'm actually blood related to the patient.
So I want to poke at that a little. So I think that's wonderful because you're like that new generation of physicians who really show up with empathy. It's like the right bedside manner, the care. And I love the fact that you extended Dr. EJ into they become part of your family. I couldn't agree more with that. But then you're dealing with your father who you're very close with. What does that feel like? The care I get, the compassion I get, but what does it feel like as both a physician and as a caregiver?
It's tough, right? Because my dad was my superhero. He was the strongest man on the earth to me. He was, the smartest person in my mind. And so now this person that I was so used to being strong, and keep in mind, my dad was really into wellness and eating right and working out. He taught us all to swim. We woke up to the juicer every single morning. So to now have to do that and to care for him, it's really tough, right?
Mhm.
It's a fine line you walk when you have to make decisions through tears. Um, and certain people in your family and around you, they can't handle it. And so it's just on you. So it is absolutely tough to have to make clinical decisions, and put emotions on the side when I have to do what's best, for him, as opposed to what I would do as a doctor, right? Like you want him to be around, you want him to have the best everything, but sometimes those emotions get in the way, and so I've learned to compartmentalize, but it is very, very, very tough.
Mm. I feel you. Thank you so much for sharing that. And by the way, if there's any comments, you want to drop in where you are, any questions, please use the chat. Let's acknowledge these are incredible superheroes. We're going to move on to the next panelist. Thank you, Dr. EJ. We'll circle back to you. So we're going to move on and please welcome our next panelist, Lucia Cantor St. Amour, an attorney, mediator, and law professor teaching negotiation and advocating for social justice cases for nearly 3 decades. A celebrated negotiation expert and cross-genre author, her most recent novel, The Covert Buccaneer, is an internationally acclaimed dual timeline historical story of courage, caregiving, and women's resilience. Values she also lives every day as a parent and advocate. Welcome, welcome, Lucia.
Hi, can you hear me?
And we can hear you. So I'm going to
Good.
ask the first
Okay.
question, but welcome.
Okay.
We're so happy to have you here.
It's my pleasure.
Lucia, as a lifelong advocate, you often say advocacy begins at home, right? And how has caregiving for your child shaped your voice as a lawyer, as a teacher, and a leader?
Yeah, it's one thing to advocate for justice in theory, right? It's another to live it daily under your own roof. And I'll just add that there isn't, in my case, that much of a bifurcation from me being an attorney and me being a caregiver because of the type of law that I practice and the type of clients that I have served. It is actually involves a great deal of compassionate care. I just and to build on that idea, it's not like a corporate or transactional work. These are people who have undocumented laborers who have lost their children, and been raided, and who are really, really desperate for help. Caring for a child with a menu of disabling conditions who is now a conserved adult and will never be able to live independently has fundamentally changed the way I listen, negotiate, and even lead. In I mean, courtrooms and in classrooms, all of it. I used to think in terms of precedent and persuasion. That's how you're taught as a fledgling, like a law student and a lawyer. But caregiving taught me that true advocacy is rooted in patience, flexibility, and curiosity. It's about understanding what someone truly needs, even when they can't articulate it themselves. And honestly, caregiving this past decade has actually made me allergic to the commodification of like neurodiversity as an algorithmic keyword to garner manufactured attention. I mean, online, it's become a branding tactic. Oh, my little ADHD quirk, or I'm a little autistic. And that's what makes me so detail oriented. But when you live with someone whose neurodivergence isn't marketing language or shorthand to make you seem like an underdog or edgy or original, you learn the real work. It isn't a personal brand, it's a relentless relationship. And that clarity has reshaped how I negotiate and teach and lead, like I already said. And when everyone is now neurodiverse, it risks trivializing what is actually a profound difference in cognition and in everyday functioning. For people, including caregivers who live with these daily impacts, it can actually feel like appropriation, like using it as social currency for authenticity, vulnerability, even bravery. And look, the cultural shift from disorder to superpower has opened real opportunities for understanding. It has, but also for a new kind of performance. So all of these shifts have made me a more fierce lawyer, a more adaptive teacher, and just a more discerning leader.
There's so much to unpack. I mean, I think the key thing that's just striking me that we don't like we can see a caregiver and there seems to be an expiration date when you caregive, unless you choose to do it professionally. And even when you begin, there's a start and end. Whereas I think what you're saying is this is ongoing and will forever be ongoing. And I think that I just want to say, how do you keep, because you're always with a brave face and a smile on your face. And I think it's important to share how you're able to do that.
Oh, that's an easy question to answer. It's because when you have a son like mine, you take nothing for granted. I shouldn't speak in universal you. I'm just going to talk about me. I take nothing for granted. Nothing. If he uses a new word like functionally, and I go, oh, I've heard him use that word before. I'm like, oh, and it makes me so happy. He's going to be 22 years old. He just finally learned to make a smoothie all on his own. I can't even begin to explain what a monumental accomplishment that is. That is like a 5-minute break I get, that I don't have to make the smoothie. I mean, so that's how I stay so cheery. Is it's like, oh, I have learned to celebrate every teeny tiny win or accomplishment since my now almost 22-year-old has been 15 months old when we first knew there was a problem.
Thank you. Thank you, Lucia, for sharing that. And I mean, hearts out to all of you guys. We're going to move on and we'll circle back. I am delighted to introduce our next panelist, Dr. Michelle Rankine, who is a serial entrepreneur. She's become a professional caregiver and a franchisee owner for Right at Home, a caregiving agency, and Fastest Labs. And welcome, Michelle. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm
Oh,
happy to be here.
I'm thrilled to have you here. So, Michelle, I love this. You lead multiple caregiving franchises while also caring for your brother. You're like truly living your mission. How do you balance the personal and the professional sides of caregiving?
Oh, that's a question. It's very hard. It's very hard. This is work that's I like to call heart work, right? And when it's heart work every day, trying to find that balance is really to navigate and a fluid process of you always checking in. I know for myself, I always compare it to a garden. And I compare it to a garden because I'm the one that is going to kill a plant. And I say that to say when you are caring for your loved one, it is so precious. It's like holding a new plant and it's blooming and it has its seeds and it's growing. But you have to make sure you treat it just like a garden. The garden needs water. The garden also has to go through some storms and weather through it. And then that garden needs all the nutrients and soil, the sun, everything to grow. And for myself, I'm constantly educating families what to do and reiterating that for myself every time I say it out loud. It is a personal reminder to me every time I say it, and for every family to say, you need to take respite, you need to take a break, and that it's needed at all times. And I say that to really just tell people it is so important to schedule that respite. I know for myself, it's something when you're in it, and I'm a Taurus woman, so I'm stubborn. And so when you're in it, you're just rolling in it. And sometimes if it's not on my calendar, I will forget. So I love what I do because I'm constantly telling people about tending to their garden, and it's like a self-healing for me as well. Michelle, did you tend to your garden? So building those routines is always key and making sure to seek that balance and seeking that balance and doing soul care.
No, that's
Can I
amazing.
say something to Michelle?
Yes.
Do you mind, just because it's fresh in my mind, you started off by saying this is heart work. Those were the first words out of your mouth. And I don't know how the rest of you feel here as caregivers, but it's like that's for us to decide to call it heart work. It's not for someone else to say to us, oh, well, that's heart work, or oh, that's your calling. Oh, it's a calling. It's like, well, if it's a calling, I'll be the one to decide it's a calling and to name it a calling. But when that is told to me, the way I receive that is, oh, that is code for we don't have to pay you as labor, which is what it is. It's work because it's a calling. You just care so much. I'll decide that if it's a calling or not.
I agree.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, but that came out of its heart work for Michelle. She was defining for her it's heart work.
That's
But
what I said.
oh yeah,
And
yeah,
she
oh
was
yeah, yeah,
defining it.
yeah,
That was my
yes,
whole point, that she was the
exactly,
one defining it. We
exactly,
decide that. Someone else
exactly.
doesn't tell us that.
I
Yeah.
couldn't agree more. And also, I think that goes to you never know what's going on inside of someone. People can put the smiles on. I would have never known that Lucia had a special needs son based on it took a long time for that to be uncovered. So I think that it's really important to know there's so much more to it. So Michelle, I'm curious, and I know that we have other questions we're going into, but doing this, I think the metaphor of the garden is a beautiful metaphor. What are you doing? So you talk about the metaphor and that you have to go back and look at it as it relates to self. What are you doing? How are you tending to your own garden as a caregiver?
How am I tending? I think one of the biggest things is I give myself 5 to 10 minutes a day. And I have a strict routine, and sometimes it falls off, but within my routine for myself and soul care is I have to wake up in the morning and reflect. I don't pick up my phone first, I reflect. And then from there, I make sure, because with caring for someone else, there are things that I have to do, right? And so when I'm getting up, I need to make sure they're taken care of. And then I always say, there is nothing that I can't walk off. So I start my day always with a walk. And sometimes it's with my two fur babies, if you don't hear them. And that is the best thing for me. I remember my life pre having a dog. It's the best therapy for me. And so I can walk off any problem before it starts for my day. And then the final thing that I always do at the end of every day is just journal. I spend at least 5 minutes to reflect and look at the things I'm thankful for. Specifically as a home care owner and caring for multiple people and helping them every day in very high stress situations, I'm very empathetic and I feel for them all the time. And so I have to look for the wins and look for the moments of gratitude constantly. And I reflect on that at the end of every day. It's so hard to lose people who you just meet. And I have to do that work and reflect and really write down all the wonderful things, especially the things that I learned from people that I may only know for a week or less.
Mm. Well, I really appreciate that. And I think it's wonderful that you start your day reflecting and end it with journaling, because that's double, in a way, it's like double reflection, if you will. Um, and having gratitude, because I do gratitude journals. It's very different when when your gratitude is connected to another's life. You know what I mean? And so kudos to you for that. We're going to move on to, and hopefully she'll be able to speak, our next panelist, who I'm delighted to introduce, Dana Pitts, an award-winning communications leader with a career spanning diplomacy, global health, and public health innovation, having recently retired from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, after 25 years of service. Welcome, Dana.
Thank you. Hopefully you can hear me. I don't know how much you guys can hear me, but
Well,
I'll give it a good try.
okay. I just want everyone to know I did have compassion and care for Dana and said, you don't have to do it, but let's try one.
I don't
Dana,
usually have this sexy low voice.
it'll be sexy, really sexy by tomorrow, I promise you. But Dana, I love this question for you. You've dedicated your career to improving public health while also caring for your mother. How do you navigate nurturing wellness both professionally and personally?
So, first of all, it's so wonderful to be here and with you and these other amazing women and people who have joined us. I'm a little different in how I'm kind of convicted by the big hearts that we have here. I think for me, my career was always so much, I'm really great in emergencies. I mean, you send me to Guinea for Ebola, I'm there, I'm really, really good at that. And with my mom, and actually looking back even through my life, I mean, having 3 children, of course, caregiver as a mom. My husband at the time had a massive heart attack, caregiver for him. My dad passed away. And now with my mother, the bottom line, the quick story with her is she turned 90 in August. We had her at my house in Atlanta. Everybody came, the new great grandchild, my first grandchild. And she was supposed to stay with me for during hurricane season in Florida. And right after the party, she just fell apart physically. She had debilitating headaches. She couldn't get out of bed. This was not my mom. My mom grew up on a farm. She was poor. She, was a nurse. She worked so hard, and I was not used to seeing her like this. I'm trying to navigate my job, and I'm seeing her there, and I kept wanting to solve the problem. I kept thinking, we have a problem we have to solve. You're 90. This is not how you're supposed to be because you've always been so strong. And how do I solve this problem? And I quickly learned that that's not how it was, that's not the approach. And instead of solving it, I rode alongside her. And, so many trips in and out of hospitals and in and out of ERs and wanting to find the root of the cause. And the truth is, we did end up, through a slew of different doctors, we ended up finding some medication that has helped her. But what I learned is that caregiving is, I guess you're so right, Michelle, it is about stopping, giving your heart, and being so present and not trying to solve a problem. My mom didn't have a medical, I mean, yes, but she just needed me to ride along with her and not try to make everything better. So a good day for us was she always did her hair, but she wasn't even able to do her hair. I had become so good with the curling iron. I would watch Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune with her and just really being present. And one of the things that she said to me, which was so meaningful, two things. She said, I never knew how hard you worked, and I never knew how tender you could be. And I think for me, that was such a beautiful moment that I'm still having with my mother. So I'm going to stop there, but I really have learned that I needed to move from this whole mindset of emergency preventing when you can't prevent, aging and the long on ramp, off ramp that people have. But I just need to be present. And she needed to know that no matter where she was, I was going to be there and not always solve the problem.
I love that, Dana. And I'm not going to ask you another question, but I want to pause and reflect on a little bit of what you said, which is instead of running to the roar, thinking that there's a solution, just being there and being present, and everybody's journey is very individual. So they might need your presence in a different kind of way. So kudos to you for showing up. As I said, I would ask the next question, but I want to be have a sip, have a drink. But thank you for that because I think that that's a really good learning to share, to leave because the thought is that the next person takes this and says, "Holy cow, I'm running to try and solve it." But the truth is, just show up. It's just about showing up. And so, thank you. We're going to move back to Dr. EJ. And we're going back to, the experience and everything you've been through. But what would you say, Dr. EJ, what would you say that caregiving has taught you about balancing like your expertise? Because you're a phenomenal doctor, but also with emotional vulnerability.
Yeah, it's funny because sounds like Dana's mom said it very, eloquently, which is like, I didn't know you were so strong, but also it's like about the caring nature that you can be. And I want to say that, my father reminded me that strength and softness can coexist, right? You don't have to sacrifice one for another because as Dana stated, you want to fix, 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 but sometimes that's not what they need. They just want you to be there. And that, I learned that it's possible to read lab results with precision and still cry quietly in the hallway. And both can be true. Both are very much human. And I used to believe that expertise meant just staying composed, right? But caring for my father, it taught me that true expertise is knowing when to let your heart open, your heart break open.
Mm,
And, and as I stated previously, you have to do it through the tears, right? This is still very much a sore subject for me. As I stated on our last Zoom that I lost my mom recently. So it's like, losing my mom and now seeing my dad continue to care for my in these moments. It's like, you know, I'm more vulnerable than I used to be, but I still have to be very much a caregiver and a medical expert. So I've learned really to balance both, right? Using some of the techniques that Michelle has utilized as well, journaling, meditating. But as I stated before, both can be true. Or you're both human, right? Whether you're soft, whether you're strong, it can coexist. And so that's what I learned about balance that, sometimes I cry. I don't let him see me cry, but other times, I'm very strong. And I have to make those decisions. And even before the call, I just got a text message from the home health company stating, oh, he's out of medications. So it's like, okay, I have to get those things together before I do whatever. And it's hard, right? But I know that as I stated, strength and softness can coexist. And that's what I've learned about balance. And I've really given myself grace. I had to tell myself, give yourself grace. And that's just how I've learned to balance.
Well, I think that's amazing. I think you just hit on another thing. Strength and vulnerability can coexist, but then you have the strategic and the tactical things come in. You get that call, you get that text. There are like technical things you have to address simultaneously with doing your job, managing your heart and being vulnerable and having those moments. And so, in those moments, what do you do? Do you breathe? Like, what are your techniques to like everything's coming at you at once?
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things, because it's been going on for some time now, my dad has had this last stroke since 2021. So he's been in the current condition that he's in since 2021. His first stroke was in 2018 and he made a full recovery. I was a drill sergeant, but it was in a different part of the brain to where he was able to just intense rehab. We were able to get him back. But in these moments, he was there by himself, so it was a little too late. But so learning over the last several years to just take a step back. I had to learn, as Michelle stated, to take care of me first, right? I can't pour from an empty cup. Pour into yourself until your cup runneth over, and pour into others from the overflow. And so I understood that I can't be the best version of me for him if I'm not the best version of myself. And so I learned that that mindset is what helped me to prioritize the wellness side, the yoga. I bought a hammock and it's on my third floor. And so I've learned to, if he's okay, if he is clean and not dry or not wet, if he is not cold, I learned to just put on headphones, go up on my third floor. I have my hammock up there and I'm just relaxing, right? So I really learned that I had to take care of me first because it was breaking me down. And if you don't understand that, and I mean, we talk about this all the time where, if you're on the airplane, put your mask on first. I had to learn to put my mask on first. Otherwise, he had no one else. And so that's what I changed my mindset around caregiving.
Mm. Wow. That's amazing. And kudos to you. I love that you give yourself grace and that you do the things. Again, I think the message here for all of you is you can't pour from an empty cup. So you need to do the work so that
Mhm.
you can show up and do all the other things you have to do on top of caregiving.
Absolutely.
We're going to move back to Lucia. Thank you, Dr. EJ. Um, Lucia, what would you say your journey has taught you about the intersection of love, law, and persistence? I love this question. You're on mute. You're on mute. Lucia, you're on mute. Yeah, thank you.
I'm going to respond. I'm going to answer your question. I'm going to respond to something Dr. EJ just said. And that is that I don't know who here is at all familiar with, he's fairly famous, Reverend Cecil B. Williams of Glide Memorial Church here in San Francisco. He talks about having a tough mind and a tender heart. And I thought of that when you talked about, well, you can be soft and tough at the same time. And that's exactly the magic formula that Reverend
Love
Cecil B.
that.
Williams suggests, a tough mind and a tender heart. And also just that, my son does not, full confession, my son doesn't get the best of me all the time. Absolutely not. There are many times when he gets just the good enough, of me, to get through the next hour, because that's just the kind of day that it is. And oftentimes for me, because Elizabeth, you asked Dr. EJ, like, what do you do in those moments? What are do you breathe? She talked about her hammock and various other things. The reality is that sometimes you just have bad options. And I have had to just choose between the least disruptive of the bad options. And that sometimes means me doing something that looks pretty cold, like just walking away from him. If I know he's safe, right? And he's like, options are I blow up and I say or do something that I'm really going to regret because I'm Italian and I got claws that can come out. Or I walk away and sometimes even lock myself in the bedroom, right? That is not a good look. It's not. Have I done it many times? Yes, because it is the best of the bad options that I have, right? To answer your question about, I think you asked about love, law, and
Yeah.
persistence.
And persistence. Yeah.
I think that's what you asked.
Yeah, I did.
That's like one of those, like, complete the following sentence. The intersection of love, law, and persistence is, well, it is, I'd say, where idealism meets endurance and practicality, which is kind of like what I was just talking about when you have like only bad options, right? So love gives me the reason to, I'm going to use the word advocate instead of fight, because I think we use fighting language too much in our casual language. Law gives me the framework to use, I guess. And then persistence is what gets me through the 1,000 small indignities along the way. Yeah, I mean, there have been days when bureaucracy feels immovable, when systems designed to protect end up excluding or frustrating instead. But I've learned that persistence isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Daily decisions to keep showing up, to keep writing the emails, to keep believing that there's progress, no matter how incremental it is still progress. So in that sense, caregiving and legal advocacy are the same muscle exercised in different arenas. And one final thing, while I've never thought of myself as a patient person, it's funny to me how many people describe me that way. So I guess I've learned a little patience along the way too.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. And I think the notion of love, law, and persistence in the context of you, I go back to what I described earlier, which is like this is a 24-hour life, 24-hour a day for the rest of your life experience. And none of us on the other side, unless we're experienced, really understand that. And so locking yourself in your room is not a bad option when you need to do that. It's like that's what I would equate with Dr. EJ's giving herself grace. That's your grace. I really appreciate that. And I think that, you speak about advocacy versus fighting. It's relentless. And I'm just, I thought your interview, Get Under the Hood of Caregiving, all of your interviews were profound. But I think you talked a lot about the relentless nature of it. Do you want to give a minute to that, Lucia, about the relentless nature?
Well, it look at a certain point, like at a certain point now in my life, like my youngest son is in his third year of college. Like I'm supposed to just be like an empty nester and just doing whatever I want. So that's not the case because of my older son who always needs care, is conserved. We're looking at group homes. He was not eligible for one that we thought was going to be the one. So now we're back to square one. So that's the relentless part of it. And I'm not even the one with the longest relationship with my son, if you think about it. That person is his brother. Siblings are the ones who actually have the longest relationship with that person. That tends to be about 60 years. It's longer than the one the parents have. So I'm always really, really conscious of that and equipping my younger son to be able to take this over someday. And, as for advocating versus fighting, I'm really aware of when I'm doing which one. Okay. I'm usually advocating. And then there are times, okay, like with what happened with this, the malfeasance and intentional bad faith conduct of a social worker a few weeks ago. And I was like, oh, now we're fighting. Now this is a fight. And you poked the wrong mama bear. And that is where, wow, lucky for my son that I am equipped the way I am. Okay, I speak English fluently. I can write with the best of them. I am educated, and I am particularly equipped to advocate not just for myself, but for other people. And so when someone in that position of authority abuses it with someone like me who has those capabilities and does it so casually, I think, oh, no. What does that mean for the other families who don't have my skills and experience? And I'm like, oh, now we're fighting. Now we're in a fight. So I know the difference and I know when I'm doing which.
I'm really happy that I poked at that because I think that's a great thing for everybody to understand with the caregiver's journey. When do you advocate and when do you fight? And it is relentless. And so thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much. We're gonna move back to Michelle. And Michelle, I love this question for you because obviously you have tremendous source of inspiration. So what was it that inspired you to turn this personal experience into a platform for providing care at scale? And I like the at scale because it's not just one-on-one for you.
Like you were mentioning earlier, it was my brother's accident. He was in a car accident about 15 years ago, and that accident diagnosed paraplegic. And, when you're going through that as a sibling, the world stops, right? I remember the moment I got the call. I remember the moment that, everything just changed for my mom, for him mostly, and it really showed in that moment, who shows up on day one and who continues to show up every day for you. And I think, as you're a caregiver and you want to support those who are the caregivers, how do you show up? And sometimes it's just being right next to me. I don't have a to-do list. I don't know what my to-do list looks like, but I just need presence. And sometimes that is all you need to solve any problem, is just knowing that there is a body next to you that could take these fights, like Lucia just mentioned, in regards to, am I going to take the fight of advocacy, or am I going to take the road of fight today? And you have that other person to bounce these experiences, and most importantly, the feelings. And that feeling really of pain, and really healing for my mom and I to take a back seat. We really had an experience with a social worker that educated us, because we thought, to my brother's best, we're both Taurus, my mom and we're a day apart. And so, as two Taurian, stubborn women, we thought we could do this all by ourselves. She take day shift, I do night shift. We can work. We got this. And we weren't well. We were not well. We were a hot mess, really and truly. And so, trying to divert that mess really only took someone else. And many times when you have a loved one you're caring for, they don't want to hear it from you. They don't. Sometimes that third party, whether that is a physician like Dr. EJ, or someone else coming in to give those wise words, a caregiver, or maybe another family member, can really give you that extra lens for that person to really see what probably just needs to be done for that day, not really a task, or maybe just sit down and watch TV. I remember sometimes that was all my brother wanted to do. He wrote a lot during that period of time in rehab. But that whole lesson of really knowing what Dana said so eloquently is that I just had to feel through it. And you
Mm.
really can't feel through it when the tasks are in front of you. So having that respite care when we finally said we couldn't do it anymore, and we really started seeing the adverse reactions in regards to brother resenting me, resenting mother, right? It was like this. It was not good. And so when you really start feeling those tensions heavy, having that third party, hiring a caregiving agency to give us that respite, gave us the time to feel and not carry guilt that, oh, what's going to happen, right? That this trust and bond was there. And so for me, during that period of time, I felt just like this is now what I need to do. I was a college professor. I was a high performance director for the United States Olympic Committee. I knew sports. But I know how to care for someone. And even with all my failures in doing so, I felt like I can definitely learn from these lessons and continue to do this for others. And that really just took me down the journey of like, I want to change my complete career that I've worked so hard for, and I'm going to do something different because I know, like similar to what Lucia was saying, this is my heart work. And you have to be able to define that. And I knew through my brother's journey that I just wanted to do that on repeat for others.
I love that. It's so important, and I really appreciate the way you express this, not only the journey, but also, creating some distance for your mother and yourself, that
Mhm.
bringing that third party in and knowing when you need that beyond the respite care, because that distance allows you to come back and in a way kind of re-energized. I want to ask you another question, but I'm very conscious of time, so I'm going to
Yeah.
move on to the next one. Dana, are you good to answer another question?
It's a saint.
Okay, okay. So, what daily rituals or moments of connection sustain you in this dual role of caregiver and advocate? I like this question.
Well, I actually do. First of all, there's so much good information being shared here, so it's phenomenal. One thing I do want to add, so I want to respond to that, but in maybe a different way. I think the biggest connection that I have done on a daily basis is get connected to the healthcare system, which is so broken, and through this. And so I mean, I know everybody would probably give a thumbs up on that, but um, for me, the connection that I've had to make, certainly with my mom, I talked about that, just the heartfelt connections and the things that we would do on a personal basis. But really, most of my time is shielding her from the incredible brokenness of things like a pharmacy that she's used for years, didn't know she had a secondary insurance. And I mean, there's so many things that I spend my time on. I love electronic health records. So one of the rituals, honestly, I do is I document. I have a checklist for my mom so she can participate. What medicines is she taking? How is she feeling? Is she doing her walk? And so the ritual is really keeping her in touch with the responsibility. I want her to feel responsible. I don't want her to just be taking medicine because people are giving her medicine. I want her to be, I want her to be a contributor to how are you feeling on this medicine? I know you're not feeling well, but let's walk. And then I also want her to understand that we are connecting a lot of inputs from so many different people, doctors, medical, tests and things like that. And so the ritual for me right now is keeping up and journaling her own health journey. So I know it's a little bit of a different answer to that question, but I just wanted to make sure that that was brought up here because navigating the health system and kind of shielding my mom from how broken it is, but helping her feel like it's not, that's a full-time job.
Well, that is, and thank you for sharing that. And it is a different answer because these aren't rituals that support, sustaining you, if you will. But at the same time, maybe they do sustain you because if you feel you're sustaining her, I just will challenge you to go back once you get your voice back and to find your daily rituals that pour into your cup. Seriously. um, thank you, Dana. Dr. EJ, how has caring for your father influenced the way you show up for your patients and for yourself? And I want to just add something to that. You talked a little bit about that in the first question, but I think that this gets more granular into, because this experience, you were the doctor first, you were always about compassion and care in your practice, but now in this case, it's a little reversed, if you will.
Hmm. Yeah. So actually going to respond based on what Dana said because it's my exact sentiments, right? I show up for my patients. Remember, I was already compassionate. I was already building programs and such for my patients because I put myself in their shoes. But I'll tell you the system. So one day I sat on hold with in the state of Texas it's 211 or in Houston it's 211. I sat on hold for 4 hours for my dad. And it brought me to tears, not because I had the time to do it, but it brought me to tears because I said, if I have the time to do it, but I have patients who maybe have to work or they don't know to do this or something else, it made me cry for my patients. I literally was in tears because I said, what are my patients going to do when they have to sit on hold for 4 hours? This system is so broken. This is the craziest thing ever to me. So, now, don't get me wrong, I give training on compassion to other doctors and hospitals, but that 4 hour hold made my fight a little bit different. And so now what I do is if I know that I have to refer a patient to something or whatever, a resource, I make sure that I have the simplified version of it. I know exactly the cheat code. I know the Cliff Notes version so that they don't have to endure that 4 hour hold that I had to. I started connecting with more community-based organizations, more hospitals, insurance carriers to make sure that patients knew what they had access to. And I continue to do that. So my fight is now different. It really helped to laser focus what I was able to offer my patients on a different level. And so that's media amplification of messaging with insurance carriers. You know, some people don't know what they have access to, right? They have this insurance carrier and they have no idea that they have this resource, this resource, this resource because they make it so difficult. So partnering with insurance carriers, pharmaceutical companies to let patients know what they have access to. GoodRx, I have a partnership with them as well. I've done partnerships with the Mayor Group DC to amplify messages and also simplify things for patients. So, you know, the compassion was there. I knew that I had that. But when I saw the system failing, I started building programs and algorithms so that my patients didn't have to endure that 4 hour wait, or at least I could minimize it. And so that's how it's influenced how I show up for patients. So now I'm showing up in a different room with hospitals, community-based organizations, leaders in institutions, things of that nature. And so that's what I do. And I've always believed in meeting them where they are, and now I do it even more.
That's amazing. And I'll tell you something, everybody should go on and listen to Under the Hood of Caregiving with Dr. EJ, with Dana, with Lucia, and with Michelle. But you'll get deeper into, because one of the things I recall you saying is that and I think Michelle said it as well, is really understand the resources available to you within your community for your said subject. So if it's stroke or whatever the condition may be, like understand that. And as I said, just because of time, I'm going to move on, but thank you for that. And, kudos for the amazing work you're doing for your patients and on behalf of them. I mean, I think it speaks to the kind of human being you are. And I say that in such an, like, really honoring the caregiver, the way you are showing up. You're not just doing that for your father. It's just who you are. And so I think that's the thing about caregivers. It's just who you are. You show up. And so,
Yeah.
so Dana, how has caregiving for your mother shaped your understanding of aging, dignity, and community care?
Well, I'll answer this quickly, but that is such an important question, Elizabeth. And I am learning, I'll be honest with you, a quick, funny story, true. So right now I'm actually at my daughter's, and my mother is actually feeling a little bit better. So I was able to come here visiting my little grandson. Well, my mom wants to keep driving. Let me assure you, my mom should not be on the road. And so I'm navigating this. My daughter is listening to me. And she goes, Mom, you cannot do that. Like when I was a teenager, when you told me, no, you can't do that. Mom, you can't drive. Like that is not the way to do it. So I will say I am still learning. That is probably one of the hardest things when you see danger and it's like she should not be on the road. But even my daughter says that's not the way to communicate to your mother, Mom. So anyhow, it's so important to really treat my mom, who has done so much with the dignity and the patience, and listening to why it's so important that she needs to drive when she can't. I haven't figured that one out, but I know I need to do it with dignity.
I so appreciate that. And I'm thinking about my mother right now when I go down to Tampa and I would just say, Hey, Mom, let's go out, drive. She said, "No, I can drive." Yeah, I got it, Mom. It was like we cannot even go there. It was not pretty, but I did manage to drive. At the end, I was driving. Michelle, thank you for that, Dana. And kudos to you. That's really good for you, that patience and care. Michelle, from your vantage point, what changes do you hope to see in how society values and supports caregivers? This is a big one, all
It
right?
is. And I think Lucia had mentioned it. When some people label things hard work and it can be a tag, I really pray as time goes on, my biggest thing is for caregivers to be seen. One, and through COVID, we were saying, oh, essential, essential, right? But especially for those that are caregivers that make it a profession, I really hope they get compensated as essential because they are the most least paid people, as well as for those that are the unpaid caregivers, that there are resources for them and that they are accessible. Similar to what Dr. EJ just mentioned, 4 hours with 211 is not fair. And it's not fair for anyone who is a laborer who has a 9 to 5. How would they have the time to do that call? And so really for those resources, I think right now what gives me hope is technology. I really think right now, leveraging technology with caregiving, similar to what Dana said, making sure people have the app for their parents or their family member or child's EMR can really save you a lot of time, and making sure that you have everything in one place. I always like to say sometimes healthcare can be tribal, so you may have this one and this one and this one and all these things. How can it all connect? And there's caregiving apps that can make that simpler, as well as to get an expertise. Many of us are not professional caregivers and may not know what the next step is. And there are apps out there that's going to give you those resources. And I think finding that hope with technology, meeting that respite, I think is what gives me hope moving forward, that we need to just know these resources, know these research studies, and that's where I think there could be some leverage. But that would be the direction I'm hoping for.
I love that. I think that that's really important. And I think you're speaking to the notion of like a connected ecosystem in a way for caregivers where it all comes together. It's centralized in a way that supports. But I also think, it's really interesting. My younger sister studied and did her dissertation in Venezuela. And her whole thing was studying the caregiver, women in the household. And she worked on, and they ended up, the government passed a bill and the women get paid a salary to caregive for their families. So it's very interesting. I mean, wouldn't that be great if the unpaid caregivers are actually compensated for their time there? Forget about like, you're going to put the love in, but your time, because it takes time away from you. We have one more question. I'm hoping everybody will stay because I think it's a wonderful close. And if anybody has any questions, if we could just stay for a few more minutes. The last question goes to Lucia. This I think is a really rich question. In moments of challenge, where do you find your strength, and what advice would you give to parents navigating similar paths?
Moments of challenge, where do I find my strength? Well, sense of humor, never leave home without it. I mean, it's these situations that we find ourselves in, me and my son, my family, they're absurd. They're so hard to describe and explain. They're just absurd. And so sometimes you just like, you have to laugh. You have to laugh. Otherwise you're going to cry. And as between the two, like, I'm going to choose to laugh. So, all right. So laugh every day, many times. I'm big on laughing. My husband and I, we laugh a lot, and also staying open to wonder. So I'll give you an example. So my son he panics in parking garages, and so he always has to go up to the roof, like to the top, so it's not closed in. And we couldn't find a spot on the street, and so I went into this garage, and there were actually plenty of spots in the garage. And I just went to take a spot, and he's like, no, we have to go to the roof. We have to go. I said, we're not, like, we were late. I said, we're not going to the roof. I said, revolve around this thing and go, it's like 6th floor. I said, and I was just gonna lose it. And I was like, what? Just go to the roof. It's actually just gonna be easier if you just drive to the roof and do what he needs. And so I try to drive to the roof. I get up to the roof, and there is this 360-degree view of the city. And I was like, oh, damn, this is a gorgeous view. So it was like, oh, look at, I sort of like got stuck doing this thing that I was like, oh, I got this like wonderful moment out of it. Right. So, and there have been so many times that's happened with him where he's just being impossible. And I'm like, ah, and then something really cool comes out. And then advice would be, get help and bring people with you. Have people with you. Have that person sit next to you. There are times when I've just asked my husband, will you just sit next to me on the sofa while I do the Social Security application? It's not that I can't do it. I'm really good at paperwork. Would you just sit next to me, so I don't feel so alone? He's like, yeah, of course. And he sits next to me. And then finally, you need to get to know what you need to know, like the resources and all the things and the laws and what you need to know. That's important. Get to know who you need to know. And I don't say influencers who are going to like jump your person ahead of the line. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about getting to know like the families who have gone through this before you, or the nurses or the caseworkers who are like, okay, let me tell you how it really works, right? who you need to know, who the people who understand.
Mm. I just love getting to know who you need to know. I mean, if we all knew who we needed to know in life, period. But as a caregiver, it's essential because other people's lives depend on that. And so, yeah, wow. I would love to. I mean, there's so much I want to say here, but I'd love to open it up to the audience if we could have a few more minutes of everybody's time. If anybody wants to share their own story or ask a question, we have four incredible panels here. And Dana, if you're willing to answer if they ask.
Just want to say thank you to the panelists. It's been really inspiring to have all of your perspectives. I feel very lucky for all the people that you are working with and serving in your careers that, they're very fortunate to have you. My story is that I have sort of like a triple caregiver. My brother has a serious mental illness, and I really believe if I hadn't stuck by his side, he would be homeless or in prison. But he's in a group home and, very, very fortunate, and he's doing very well on long-term, long-acting products. Then my mother went through cancer several times and just passed away, and I was very fortunate that I could be by her side for the last 6 months, just because I left my job as a CEO, and just timing wise, it worked out, that I got to spend some very special moments with her that I would not have been able to do. And now my dad, who's 92, I got a call in the middle of the night, and he was like, "You can come in. You can come in. Robin, are you there? You can come in." And I was like, "Do you need me?" So, like, even last night, I had to get up in the middle of the night and go to my dad's house because he was confused. And, so it's like I said, triple caregiver. But this has really filled my cup, just to say thank you to all of the panelists for sharing your stories, because it just makes me realize I'm not alone. And, there's a lot of amazing people out there who we're very lucky to have in the world with us.
I couldn't agree more. And I wanted to get Robin on the panel as well. She wasn't ready
I
for
was
it.
like, it's too hot. I
Yeah, it's
can't.
very, but I think with all of you guys, like listening to the stories you've created, the interviews, because I think that you delve into so many unique aspects that a panel, we have all of us, and you get to answer a few questions, but each of you did a really beautiful job at sharing that. I don't know if, I'm sorry, Amy, so is there anybody?
Anybody else have anything to share? Okay. Well, thank you all for coming in today for this very special event. And thank you all once again to the panelists for sharing your stories and sharing your hearts with us. It's been very impactful. I think we're all walking away with something to remember and to think about and to take into consideration when we meet people in the world, and we never know what they're going through, and we never know who they might be a caregiver for. And I think if we can all remember that and just show a little more kindness to people, because what is beneath the surface may not be seen. So thank you all for coming in today. Yep, Lucia. Oh, you're waving. Okay.
Actually, Smitha actually asked a question if you want to go in there because she's
I'm
not
not.
able. Yeah.
I am not waiting. I struggle with creating meaningful moments with my mom because I'm so focused on fixing things and coordinating stuff, missing out on valuable time with her. Mm.
Yeah, you have to make it a
I
point, right? You have to prioritize this. Remember, I stated to change your mindset around caregiving, enjoy this moment. It's like anything. I tell people, I do a lot of coaching with any goals, right? You got the what, the why, and the how. The what is the goal, the why is why you're doing it, the how is the actual execution plan and the plan in order to accomplish it. And I also do something called the 168 hours, because there's 168 hours in a week. And I do this with busy women, and I recently did it with a group of student leaders in South Carolina. But we mapped out the week, and then we put in what are the mandatories. We put that in black, and then we put other things in green, yellow, we color coordinated. And so I'm a very organized, structured kind of person. So I encourage you to do that, to organize, put things into pockets, right? These are the times or hours when you coordinate things, and this is the time that you spend with your mom, whether it's doing puzzles or just memories, talking to her, those kind of things. And I don't know her condition, but I encourage you to prioritize that, and that should really go at the top, and everything else is secondary, you know?
And I think you said something really great. And you also said this in your interview was like, as long as my dad's dry and safe, then you can just go and be present. Dana, you spoke to presence, like just being there. You don't have to solve for those list of things. You just have to be by their side.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say thank you to these. You guys are so inspiring. Thank you for the work you do. It's, what's work. It's like, thank you so much. And thank you for sharing it today with this amazing audience. So thank you all for showing up to come and hear these stories. And this is our last Under the Hood event of the year. So we will be seeing you in the new year. I will be sending out an invite with a link if you want to share it with anyone, but I think this is a great conversation today. So thank you all for